Your brain's been hijacked. You keep making promises to yourself you can't seem to keep. You want to change, and sometimes you do for a few days. Then it fades, and you wonder if maybe this is just who you are. Inconsistent, unreliable, broken in some invisible way. But what if it's not about willpower? What if it's not about laziness or discipline or drive? What if the reason you can't stay consistent is because consistency feels like a threat to something deeper in you? What if the problem isn't that you keep stopping, but why you keep starting over? You're tired, not in the way a nap could fix, but in that deep, bone-heavy way that comes from carrying invisible expectations every day. You wake up already behind on your dreams, behind on your promises, behind on this idea of who you were supposed to be by now. And every attempt to get it together just seems to circle back to the same pattern. A burst of motivation, followed by a quiet collapse. You start things, a new routine, a new habit, a new version of you, and for a moment it feels like maybe this time it'll stick. Maybe this time you finally crack the code. But then life happens. Something breaks your rhythm, and suddenly you're watching your own momentum fade in slow motion, powerless to stop it. The guilt creeps in, then the shame, then the voice that whispers, "See, you did it again." You question everything, your discipline, your ambition, your worth. And what makes it worse is that you want this. You want to grow. You're not lazy. You're not uninterested. You just feel like something inside keeps pulling the emergency brake the second you begin to move. And then you start hiding. From your goals, from your progress, from yourself. You avoid mirrors, texts, calendars, anything that might remind you of what you were trying to become. Not because you don't care, but because it hurts to feel like you're constantly failing your own potential. You're exhausted, not from work, but from being on all the time, from having to perform like everything's fine when you're quietly unraveling. And the scariest part isn't even the inconsistency. It's how familiar it's become, how numb you've grown to the cycle, how even your own self-betrayal feels like home now. But there's a reason this keeps happening, and it has nothing to do with your character, your hustle, or your ambition. There's a reason you keep breaking your own heart in the name of progress, and it deserves to be understood, not judged. Here's the thing most people won't say out loud. You're not actually struggling with consistency. You're struggling with trust, not trust in others, trust in yourself. Deep down, there's this quiet fear that haunts every new beginning. What if I give it everything this time, and it still isn't enough? So instead of risking that kind of heartbreak, you subconsciously pull back. You self-sabotage in small, almost invisible ways. You delay the start. You tinker with the plan. You wait for the perfect time that never comes. Because as long as you don't go all in, you always have a reason, a cushion, for why it didn't work. You can tell yourself, well, I wasn't fully committed anyway. It protects you, but it also paralyzes you. And the hardest part, you don't even realize you're doing it. To the outside world, and maybe even to yourself, it looks like laziness, like a lack of discipline. But underneath it all is a deeper wound you've been burned before, by goals that didn't work out, by effort that didn't get rewarded, by moments where you showed up fully and still ended up hurt. So now, a part of you would rather quit early than face that feeling again. You're not inconsistent. You're terrified of building something that could disappoint you again. And so you chase change with one foot on the gas and one on the brake. You keep reaching for transformation, but never quite letting it catch you. Not because you don't want it, but because consistency would require you to hope again. And hope, when it's been betrayed enough times, starts to feel dangerous. That's the quiet battle happening beneath the surface. It's not that you're incapable, it's that you've confused consistency with pressure, progress with perfection, effort with exposure. And every time you slip up, even a little, it doesn't just feel like a mistake. It feels like confirmation of your deepest fear. That maybe you're just not the kind of person who gets to change. But you are. You always were. You've just been protecting yourself in the only way you knew how. Here's what most people never learn about behavior change. It's not just about what you want to do, it's about what your nervous system feels safe doing. Your body, your brain, your emotional memory, they're all wired to protect you first, evolve second. And that wiring is shaped by more than just discipline or mindset. It's shaped by experiences, especially the ones that hurt. Think about it like this. If you once gave something your all, a project, a relationship, a dream, and it ended in failure or rejection or shame, your nervous system took notes. It filed that moment away under danger. And now, every time you start to step into something similar, your body whispers, careful. That whisper might sound like procrastination, or overthinking, or suddenly getting sleepy the second you sit down to focus. But underneath, it's your system doing exactly what it was designed to do, keep you safe from emotional pain. And it doesn't matter how much logic you throw at it. The part of your brain responsible for keeping you consistent, the prefrontal cortex, can get completely hijacked by older, deeper systems that are hardwired to avoid risk. That's why it feels like there's two versions of you, the one who plans everything on Sunday night and the one who ghostwrites excuses on Monday morning. It's not that one is lazy, it's that one is trying to move forward while the other is gripping the brakes. Alfred Adler, a pioneer of psychology, believed that every person lives their life according to a guiding fiction, an unconscious story about who they are and what their role in the world is. If your fiction says, I'm someone who always lets things fall apart, then even when you try to change, your actions will subtly try to prove that story true. Not because you want to fail, but because identity is powerful. We would rather be right than be happy. Emotional memory works the same way. It doesn't just remember what happened, it remembers how it felt. And those feelings shape your choices more than logic ever could. It's why a song or a smell or a simple calendar notification can trigger this sudden wave of dread or defeat. Your body remembers how hard it was to try last time. So even before you start, you already feel tired. You're not broken for that. You're responding to the memory of effort without payoff. The truth is, we all carry survival wiring. And consistency, real consistency, requires us to override that wiring with gentleness, not shame. It requires us to stop asking, why can't I just do it? And start asking, what part of me is scared to try again? Because that's where the real shift begins. Not in hacks, not in habits, but in safety. Change sticks when your nervous system feels safe enough to trust the new story you're telling. And trust doesn't come from pressure. It comes from patience. Imagine you're a house with a beautiful front porch. From the outside, it looks inviting, well-kept, charming, full of potential. People walk by and admire it. You even leave the light on just in case someone decides to visit, but the door never opens. Not fully, because inside the rooms are half built. Some are still under renovation from the last storm. Others are locked tight, filled with blueprints you were too afraid to follow through on. Every time you try to fix the place up, you stop midway. Not because you don't care, but because part of you is scared someone might actually step inside. See the mess, the peeling paint, the corners you never finished. So instead, you keep polishing the porch, rearranging the furniture, making it look like you've got it all together from the street view. You become a master at appearances. But deep down, you're still standing in a hollow frame, wondering why it never feels like home. That's what this pattern really is. Not laziness, not failure, but self-protection disguised as hesitation. You've been trying to build something real while terrified someone might come close enough to see it crumble. So you stay busy on the surface, start new projects, plan out routines, buy the journals, watch the motivational videos, light the candles. But you never quite walk through the door. And that's not because you're incapable. It's because consistency would mean staying long enough to finish what you started. And finishing would mean facing the fear that maybe it still won't be enough. Maybe the house will never feel safe. So you pause, you stall, you stay in the doorway. And from the outside, no one sees the war you're fighting just to pick up a hammer again. You weren't resisting change. You were resisting the heartbreak of watching yourself try again and maybe still not get it right. You weren't lazy, you were scared, not of effort, but of disappointment, not of discipline, but of feeling like you were never enough, no matter how much you showed up. And that version of you, the one who kept starting and stopping and hiding, they weren't a failure. They were just trying to survive in a world that never taught them how to feel safe inside their own effort. You've been blaming yourself for inconsistency when really you've been grieving trust. Trust in your ability to follow through. Trust in your story. Trust in the idea that maybe this time it could work. But what if we saw it differently? What if inconsistency wasn't a character flaw, but a signal? A soft flare from your nervous system saying, I want to go forward, but I don't know if it's safe yet. What if the back and forth wasn't proof that you're broken, but proof that you're still trying, even through the fear? You see, your brain doesn't change when it's shamed. It changes when it feels seen. So maybe the healing doesn't begin with a new routine or another promise to do better. Maybe it begins with forgiveness. Forgiving the version of you that ghosted your goals because they didn't know how to handle the weight of hope. Forgiving the part of you that checked out, not because you didn't care, but because caring was starting to hurt. Maybe consistency isn't about pushing harder. Maybe it's about softening toward yourself. Letting go of the idea that you have to prove your worth through perfect follow-through. Maybe you're allowed to be in progress. Maybe the pauses were part of the process. Maybe it's okay that you're still building your house, one room at a time. Because you're not behind, you're healing in real time. You're learning how to stay. Not for anyone else, not for the world, but for yourself. You're learning how to trust that it's safe to begin and keep beginning. Even if it's imperfect, even if it's slow. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to come home to the part of you that never stopped hoping. And maybe that's what consistency really is. Not doing it all, just not giving up on yourself. When it gets quiet again, you are here, and that's already enough for today. Not here in the way the world measures presence, not with checkboxes or productivity, but here in the quiet hum of your breath, in the subtle ache in your shoulders, in the stillness between everything you were trying to figure out. You made it through another cycle of self-blame, of overthinking, of wondering why you can't just get it together. And yet, you're still here, still willing to look inward, still curious enough to listen. That matters more than you know, because most people don't slow down long enough to hear their own hearts anymore. But you did. You paused. You let yourself feel the weight of a story you've been carrying for years. You leaned in. That's not nothing. That's grace. You don't need to rush to apply this. You don't need to spin this moment into a plan. Let it breathe. Let it sit with you like a warm hand on your back, saying nothing, just reminding you that you're not alone in this room anymore. Because sometimes the most powerful thing isn't the strategy, it's the space. Space to feel your own pace again. Space to remember that your life isn't a to-do list. It's a living, breathing process. And no matter how many times you've paused, stalled, relapsed, broken down, there's still time. There's still something worth rebuilding inside of you. The path is still open, so maybe today isn't about trying harder. Maybe it's about softening, letting go of the edge. Maybe it's about taking your hand off the stopwatch and realizing there is no race. Maybe it's looking at your reflection, tired eyes, undone hair, uncertain heart, and whispering, "You're okay. I see you." Because sometimes that's the most radical act of consistency there is. Choosing to stay kind to yourself when everything in you wants to shut down. Choosing not to escape the moment, but to gently return to it. And if all you did today was listen, if all you managed was to sit with these words, let them touch something tender inside you, then you've done more than enough. You've broken the cycle, just for today, just for a moment. That's how change begins. Not in grand declarations, but in subtle reorientations. In moments where you say, maybe I don't need to fix everything today. Maybe I just need to remember I'm not broken. Because you're not. You've never been. Even when your patterns told you otherwise. Even when your efforts slipped through your fingers. Even when the world praised your productivity and ignored your pain. You were still worthy, still whole, still human. And being human means you're allowed to take up space exactly as you are, in progress, in healing, in doubt, in softness. Let that truth settle into your nervous system like warm light through a window. Let your jaw unclench. Let your breath move lower into your belly. There's nothing to prove here. No one to impress. No performance required. You are allowed to be here without a plan, without a finish line, without knowing the next step. Because some days the bravest thing you can do is pause without quitting. Rest without guilt. Be still without shame. And if you've been holding your breath, waiting for the right time to begin, waiting to be more perfect, more prepared, more ready, maybe now is the moment to exhale, not to act, just to release, to let the weight fall off your shoulders piece by piece, to let this be enough, this presence, this breath, this you are not behind. You're exactly where your healing needs you to be. And every time you return to yourself with patience, with presence, with gentleness, you rewrite the story. You rebuild trust. You teach your nervous system that it's safe to stay, to straighten, to begin again, being from force but from care. You don't need to chase momentum. You don't need to manufacture urgency. You don't need to do anything except honor the fact that you showed up. And that's rare. That's brave. That's something worth holding on to, especially on the days that feel foggy or slow or strange. Because those days are still part of the journey, still sacred, still yours. So if your mind drifts later, back to old doubts or the itch to rush or the pressure to do more, just remember this moment, this softness, this pause. Come back to it, like a room in your house that's always warm, a space you don't need to clean up for. Just walk in, be, breathe. You're not falling apart, you're unfolding, and every time you choose to stay present with yourself, especially when it's hard, you make it a little easier to stay next time. That's what healing does. It builds slow trust in the parts of you that were taught to run. So maybe you don't need a new version of you. Maybe you just need a new relationship with the one who's already here, the one who tried, who hurt, who hid, who kept showing up anyway. That version, they're not your enemy. They're your origin story, and they deserve your love more than anyone else. Let today be a thank you, a quiet nod to yourself, for making it through, for staying curious, for not giving up. Let today be a reminder that healing isn't loud, it's subtle, still, and sacred. Just like you. You're here. You're enough. You're already becoming. Which part of this felt like it was written for you? Was it the hesitation before starting something new, or the silence after another plan quietly fell apart? Maybe it was the part about the house, how you keep polishing the porch but never open the door. Or maybe it was something softer, something you didn't expect to feel so deeply, like the idea that your inconsistency isn't a flaw, but a form of self-protection. If something in this spoke to you, I hope you let it sit with you a while. Let it echo in the parts of you that usually get drowned out by noise. You don't have to fix anything right now. You don't need to decide what comes next. This doesn't need to become another thing you try to master. Maybe you just bookmark this moment. Maybe you come back to it the next time you start to spiral into shame for stopping, or the next time you catch yourself stalling out of fear. And if someone came to mind as you listened, someone who's also been stuck in this loop of almost starts and unfinished chapters, maybe send this their way, not as advice, just as a quiet reminder. You're not the only one who feels like this, because that's the truth of it. You're not alone. So many of us are out here trying to build lives while carrying unspoken fears of failure, of not being enough, of losing ourselves in the process. And it helps sometimes just to know that someone else gets it, that someone else has stood in that same hallway of hesitation and found a way to keep walking. You're not broken. You're a masterpiece in progress, painted in pain, but still art. Keep that with you. Save this space for when you need it. And if you ever want to share what part of this stayed with you, I'll be here. quietly listening, always.